with a knife video for you, and today I am finally going to get to my best knives of 2019. These two I figured I'd use as the introduction because I've been going on and on about these two knives all year, and for good reason. These are fantastic. These may be my very favorite production knives ever. They're that good and are easily these may be the best production knives of the decade rather than just the year. These are incredible, incredible knives. So before we get into any more of the list, I've kind of given away these two at the beginning because it was not going to be a surprise to anyone anyway. Let me first say happy New Year. I wish all of you all of God's blessings for 2020. I'm hugely thankful for all of you who watch and comment. I think, our knife community is really, really a lot of fun. And especially, guys, this comment section, you guys tend to be really, really awesome. I mean, I talk to a lot of other knife reviewers on a regular basis, and the things that go on in their comment sections, the insane things that they have to delete because they're just disgusting. And the fact that I don't see that on my channel is so encouraging. Don't go and ruin it for me now just to prove me wrong. But thank you so much, guys, for watching, for subscribing, for commenting. Have a happy New Year. And again, I wish all of you all of God's blessings because you're an awesome bunch of people who watch and subscribe to these videos. Next thing, by the way, this video should post on New Year's Eve, so it's a really fitting time to say that. The next thing I want to say is there have been some really, really cool things this year. I'm not going to get to them all. I may squeeze in some honorable mentions, but I also want to squeeze in at the very end of this video a couple little gripes about this year that I think will be rather interesting. And then I want to give you one quick preview. In a little while, probably next week sometime, early 2020, I want to do a little response video. There's a really, really interesting video out there from Blade HQ where they outline the top sellers for 2020. And that's a really interesting video and reveals, I think, a whole lot, much more than, for example, this video or the other reviewers talking about their best knives of this year. That video really tells you what people have been buying, and I think that's really, really interesting. Now, of course, Blade HQ is going to be largely enthusiasts. So, anyway, we'll have a whole discussion about that in the next couple of weeks. So let's get back to my discussion here and begin by sharing with you why I love these two knives. Again, I've said it over and over again, but I just want to say these two knives I like so much because of three things. So one, they're fantastic production versions of custom knives. And I mean, by fantastic, I mean, they've really done a great job of capturing everything that's essential to the custom 8010 and the 8015, much like the Formax did before. These are very, very close to the actual customs, and that's super, super exciting. The Scorpion lock is just a really fun lock. It's effective, it's useful, it's fidgety. Just makes this a really, really cool knife. By the way, Cold Steel for 2020, let's see some color options. There's, just sell me the scales, right? Just make it available so that I can pick any color scale that I want and pop them on here. I really, really want to see that. But yeah, you guys are aware that I love these knives a whole lot. So one, they're faithful reproductions, they're faithful productions of custom knives. That's awesome. Two, they really, really effectively combine function and form. I think these are beautiful, beautiful knives, and I find myself really, really drawn to the look and feel of these knives. The overall aesthetic is wonderful, and yet they're extremely useful tools. And number three, they're not insanely priced. These are knives that anybody who wants them can get a hold of. Unlike, we've had a ton of great production custom knives, the Snafu, the, come on, why can't I think of, there's another custom knife factory that just came out. We had the Paisan. We've had a bunch of great, Paisan wasn't great, but we've had some good efforts this year at making custom knives available, and that's gained a lot of attention, and I love that. But many of those have been quite expensive, and none of them have been as useful and well put together as these. Like, these are fantastic, fantastic knives that you can carry and use and just beat on and be totally confident about that, right? And so in addition to being highly faithful productions. In addition to being cost effective, they also haven't had all the drama and issues that a number of the other attempts, and I'm going to call them attempts because they really just weren't all that they could have been, turned out to be. So, uh, just great. Now, let's move on to the next knife on the list. I don't have it here with me, but I'll roll in a picture here, and that is the Brian Nadeau Evo Typhoon. I love Brian. I love his work, and the Evo Typhoon, by all accounts, I've only handled a couple. I haven't owned one, haven't had one to review. So if you've got one and you want to send it over to the channel for a review, please get in touch with me. But I think this is one of the greatest knives for the year. It's just a really good balance. The cost isn't too crazy. The quality is off the charts. The balance in terms of being a useful tool, it scratches that high-end itch really, really well. And it's just a fantastic design. And here's the other thing, and this is sort of similar to these guys. If you're looking at a picture right now, I was just pointing at the cold steels. The Evo Typhoon, again, offers something really, really cool, and that is you get Brian's proprietary detent system, which is really, really awesome. So Evo Typhoon in its various forms definitely goes on this list. And these are not really in order, guys. I haven't gone, off the charts trying to list these in the way that, I haven't tried to rank these first to last. They're just all here. Okay, next up, Spyderco Amalgam. I love this knife. The one issue I have with it is it's on bearings. Spyderco, if you're listening, if you're going to do an Amalgam 2 or if you're going to update it, put it on washers and that will embrace what this knife is really, really meant to be, which is a heavy duty, hard use, utility type of knife. The bearings limit that to some degree. Now, look, when in Cedar Canada's video, he threw it in the mud and demonstrated that bearings are going to get all gummed up. Well, washers are going to get gummed up too in that situation. And I don't regularly throw my knives in the dirt and drag them around on the ground. So I've had lots of bearing knives, and I've had a few that I've never even opened up to clean, and they still work perfectly. So it's maybe not as big of an issue as I made even in my review of it. I still absolutely love this knife. It's on my list. Just lightweight, easy to carry, highly functional. I absolutely love the Spyderco Amalgam. I think it's a huge win. Let's stick with Spyderco for a couple minutes because there's some other knives that I want to mention here that are, what would you call these? Secondary entries. Okay, let's call these some secondary entries. First of all, it wouldn't be fair because of its popularity, because of how well received it has been. This is a Para 2, but the Para 3, guys, I've got to mention. All right, the Paramilitary 3 has really captured the love of the knife community, and I kind of get it. To me, no. For me, this is almost too small for me. I'd like to have more blade length on the Para. So going even smaller doesn't make sense to me. However, I have handled a couple, and I will get a lightweight for review on the channel. I think that's a really compelling option. So the Para 3 lightweight, I guess, is really the one that I'm more focused on here. Really good knife, really impressive, I've got to say. The price point is great. I love the steel choice they went with. And the Para 3 definitely deserves a mention. Now, I want to add a couple of other knives here to my secondary list. The Police Lightweight, I think, is another very compelling option. It's just an Endura on steroids. And, offering it in the lightweight version, I think, is a really, really good move from Spyderco. It gives you a huge knife for a very small form factor in pocket and a very lightweight carry. And along those lines, I've got to say the Spider Chef as well. Spidey Chef, I should say. The Native is awesome. The Shaman is awesome. Everything out of this family is awesome. Okay, so we've got the Native, we've got the Shaman, and now the Spidey Chef. And I really like all of those knives. I don't have them here with me, but I'll be putting in some pictures as we're kind of working our way through here. I like them because they're just really handy utility knives. They're great cutting tools. They're not crazy expensive. They carry well. They cut well. They're comfortable in hand. I mean, so Para 3, Police Lightweight, and Spidey Chef are all on this list. Now, another knife that I was super, super excited about and still am, a knife that I absolutely love from this year, and maybe one of the best things that Benchmade has ever done. I guess I'll bring a Benchmade in. I don't have the knife in question, but the Super Freak, the Benchmade Freak in M4 steel, What a great knife. Absolutely perfect in so many ways. I wish it didn't have a black coating. I wish they would give us just the raw M4 steel, or change the steel to some, I don't know. No, I like the M4. Let's stick with M4. It makes it different. It makes it interesting, but just drop the black coating. Very, very compelling knife. I'm super stoked about that. By the way, so, since we're looking at the Contigo, I've got to say this. There have been some great deals this year. That's something that really stands out to me. Um, these knives are still available at Knife Center for like 129 or 139, I think, which for what you're getting is ridiculous. That is an insanely good price. A while back, I made mention of this knife for $100. Cold Steel's website has had a bunch of knives. The Broken Skull, I think, was like $40 or $50 in the last few weeks leading up to Christmas. I don't know if it's still that price, but that's all really, really good. Okay. Now, so the Benchmade Freak, what do I love about it? The size, the feel in hand, the construction, the design, the blade steel, the blade shape, the edge geometry. I mean, everything about that knife is just exactly what it should be. And for all of those reasons, I love it. I get the price point is high, but it's a Benchmade, and it's sort of a special edition Benchmade. So that's about what I would expect from that. By the way, this is the KnifeWorks exclusive Contigo. KnifeWorks, if you're listening, if you did an exclusive of the Freak, that would be awesome. Do the G10 layer just like this. Do the M390 steel. That would be just an insta-buy knife for me and for many, many others who want the stainless properties. They still like the layered G10, but they just want stainless rather than the M4. I think that would be a great, great move. Moving on here, this is not the next knife on the list, but it is a knife on the list. But I want to talk about WE knives for a second. The first WE knife on the list that I actually want to talk about is the Malice. That is such a great design. And WE Knives has done some really, really good stuff this year. Their best stuff always seems to be when they collaborate with another designer. And WE Knives really does kill it when it comes to manufacturing. Sadly, we didn't see anything as special out of the Master Drop collaborations as we did last year. Wow. The Keen and the Crux, I'm still talking about those knives because they are perfect knives. They really are. It's just, when those knives came to get, when WE Knives and Ferrum Forge and Ray Laconico in the other case came together and designed and built those knives, it was like a match made in heaven. It really was. So those were special knives. They haven't, I would say this year, Master Drop has not reached that same level of perfection. All right, so I'm a little disappointed in the WE knife in the Master Drop collaborations this year. However, I think the WE produced knives. There's the Malice, this one, the WE 037, and there's the the one with the holes in it. The Miscreant. Sorry, guys. I'll throw a picture in here of that one as well. The Miscreant, I think those are some of the best that WE has ever come up with. And the Malice stands out at the top of that list. It feels great in hand. I love the look of that knife. I love the blade shape. I love so many things about it. That's one of my favorite WE knives of all time. Now, this one I kept in the collection for a couple of reasons. I know a couple of you asked me, Kevin, why are you always going on about the 037? And there's a very simple reason. This knife this is an almost no sacrifice knife, which is extremely rare. Generally speaking, okay, what we have to do is we say, okay, this knife has this good feature, but it has this one issue. All right, this knife is missing that last component, right? Everything about it is amazing. The blade length, the blade grind, the geometry, the feel in hand, the weight, right? This is 4 ounces for a 9-inch knife. The pocket clip, now look, they've done something interesting with the pocket clip here where they've recessed it, and yet it still works. Now, I've got to say this, guys, if we can build this knife and make a pocket clip that's actually recessed into the handle and yet still goes in and out of pocket easily, there is no excuse for anyone making a pocket clip that doesn't work. I also love the way this is put together, but that's why this knife has stayed with me, because you don't have to make any sacrifices. It cuts extremely well. It feels perfect in hand. When you grip this knife, you're like, it's like they took a plaster cast of my grip and then made the knife for me. And many, many people have made made that comment. We got a nice big finger trail. The yeah. So the reason this knife is on this list is because, as I said, it's a no compromise knife. Now, not everyone is in love with the looks. Many people are. I really like the way it looks. The only, perhaps you could argue that the blade is a little too narrow for the handle. So if this blade kind of came up here and did this type of thing, and by the way, I do know that the designer, whose name I always forget, and I'm forgetting it right now, but the designer is working on a 037 version 2. I don't know if Wee's going to make that or if he's going to make it himself and allow, people to buy into it, whatever. So really, really cool. This is just one of those knives that has no compromise. The Malice, again, I loved so many things about it, but it was pretty heavy, and that was my only issue with it. Moving on to the next knife on the list, Steel Will. One, they've done a good job. They've had a bunch of good models this year, so they've done a good job for the year. But the Steel Will Tasso is a special knife. The lock is really fun. It's highly functional. It feels amazing in hand. The blade grind is fantastic, right? I would put it right up there easily as comparable to the Benchmade Griptilian, the Para 2, even comparable to the Super Freak that we talked about earlier. Really, really great knife. And I haven't reviewed the full size yet. I have handled a couple. I did a full review on the small, and I got to, have spend some real time with it, so I'm very familiar with the construction and the quality and all of that, which I have no doubt is carried over on the full size. So for all those reasons, the Steel Will Tasso, large or small, goes on this list. Just again, Steel Will totally knocked it out of the park with that one, and I'm really glad they did, because it was a long time waiting for that lock, like 3 years I think waiting before we actually saw something come along. The next knife that I want to talk about, I don't have a Civivi here, so I'll leave the Wii knife on the table since they're made by the same company. I've got a few Civivis to mention here. The Elementum is the one on the short list, and this is an interesting knife. I do have one coming, guys. I have rarely had so many requests for reviews. And so, of course, when you guys say, hey, Kevin, you've got a review of Civivi Elementum. I know you don't like small stuff, but I think this is worth, I really want to hear your thoughts on it. Well, of course, I go and Google it. And when I Google it, I get like, I don't know, 100 YouTube reviews. So even though there's all these reviews, it's kind of odd to me that I'm still getting requests. But I have one on the way that's going to kill two birds with one stone, because there's another request related to Civivi that I've been getting. And so this one knife that's coming will cover both of those. But I wanted to make mention of it, even though I haven't had it, because it's been so popular. And I have watched many of those reviews. And so everyone loves it, adores it. And I'm sure that although I won't like it for its size, I'll be echoing what other reviewers have said, because I literally can't find anyone who doesn't like it. I've looked and looked to find something bad about the Elementum. Two other knives I want to add to the list that I've heard other reviewers mention, and so I'm going to pass on here. And these are knives that I will get my hands on eventually. Possibly, okay, the Duras and the Shredder ought to be on this list. They both look to be hollow grinds. They're very attractive designs both, and so those are knives that I wanted to just make mention of in passing, and I'll throw some pictures in here. Now, one of the things I've got to say, there's a couple knives I want to point out here, and there's probably a long list. I'd like to ask you guys, one of the things that I've had to stop and think about is, chasing the newest thing all the time. And it's never been a big thing for me. There's always been knives that I felt like were more important, and there have been lots of knives that I've passed on. But I would love to hear in the comments, some knives that were big from previous years. The two that come to mind, the Boost Blade Smoke, I think, is a truly special knife. It's unique, it's interesting, and it's fantastic. And that's a knife to go out and pick up if you haven't got one. The XM18, the Hinderer stuff from last year, I think 2018 was like the year of Hinderer. They did a great job. Now, I've got a couple of gripes for this year that I want to finish with. Some things that ticked me off in 2019, okay? First of all, we had some price increases, and I get that business costs money. I get that, there's inflation and all that stuff. But one, I think some of them were misguided. Now, Spyderco seems to maybe have rethought some of this, because they've come out with a few extra knives that were, more budget friendly. But Spyderco prices continue to rise. Zero tolerance prices continue to rise. Um, and disappointingly, zero tolerance has nothing notable for this list this year, which is kind of too bad. But they, the prices continue to go up, which is odd given the market pressure being exerted by overseas, the Chinese makers. Now, one Chinese maker that I've got to complain about a little bit is Custom Knife Factory. I know they do the thing, they're hand assembled in Russia, blah, blah, blah. I highly doubt that they are. But furthermore, we know the manufacturing is done in China, so you're saving a ton of money on manufacturing. And because it's essentially a made in China item, there is no way in the world that I'm paying $650 or more, right? And so there've been some great knives. The Fief 23 was perfection. It was amazing. It was it was a work of art. It was a functional cutting tool. It was everything that I would ever dream of a high-end knife being. But there's no way I'm owning one. For $650, that is too much. I don't care what materials are involved. I don't care how well put together it is. It's not significantly better than say Riot, which is $200 or $300 less. Okay, sorry. The Rotten design, CKF, now I can't think of the knife that came out, but it came out recently. Again, it was a knife I was really excited about, that custom collaboration, but $675, forget it. For that price, I'll save up and buy a custom. Like, come on. I know I know the customs just don't exist. No, they don't get built, period. But with all of that being said, I've got to give Koenig some props. Now, hopefully he doesn't make me eat my words. Bill, please, please don't raise your prices. Everyone else is jacking their prices, okay? And I've said this before in videos, but the Holt Spectre is an amazing $500 to $600 knife. At $700 for a base model, it's a pass for me, and I can't recommend them in good conscience. Again, the Grimsmo knives at $600-700, amazing. At $900 and at the secondary prices, pass, hard pass. Same is true of a number of other knives, and I don't think the market will bear this long term. So I don't know. I get that they were in such high demand that you have to raise prices to get that demand to back off a little bit. I totally get that, and you sure got my demand to back off. Okay, so your plan worked, and I just can't recommend those knives. Too stinking expensive. And I don't mean that. I mean, too expensive for what you're getting. Sorry, guys. Take offense, be upset if you want to, whatever. The Chamois is the same way. The Chamois is ridiculous. Again, it's a great, fantastic $700 knife, but it's not a fantastic $2,000 knife. And that's one where the market is so insanely inflated that people are going to lose their shirts. It's going to make the Hinderer dropped, Hinderers dropped from like 800 down to 300. That's a big drop. The Chamois are going to be even worse. Okay, finally, let's move on to some other gripes. The rising prices and the overall pricing is a complaint I have. Chinese D2. All right, I like D2 steel. I do. But it's sort of like the Chinese producers got this idea that, hey, those guys in the US will buy our knives, we make them in D2. Let's just make them all in D2. Thank you, I think. All right. I'm glad that the Chinese makers are listening. I'm glad they care about what we want as consumers. It makes sense for them to do so. But I would much rather have seen most of the knives that came out in D2 this year come out in 14C28N or 9CR18 MOV. Sorry, that's what I would have rather seen. Okay. Another one I've got to complain about is, thinking of steel, is companies giving us soft steel. There've been a bunch of companies over the last couple of years. A bunch of reviewers started sending knives off to be tested, which is great. And their individual results were pretty. But anyway, soft steel is not cool. All right, and we really, and I'm glad that a number of reviewers out there started holding companies accountable. That's kind of the role of reviewers, and you know, we have to make sure that we don't sell out. Of course, we can be a company's best friend. When you make something awesome and we love it, hey, that's great. And you look at how many knives have just gone crazy because all the reviewers just thought it was the greatest thing ever. But the problem is, as a knife manufacturer, you've got to take the good with the bad. And so when you blow it, guess what? We're all gonna kind of get upset. And a number of reviewers have, you know, sent out knives for testing that got abysmal results, and so that's really bad. One last gripe, and this is just a gentle complaint, guys. There's been a bunch of there have been a bunch of reviewers, and especially in their knife of the year videos, they've talked about. I'm just going to bring in some stuff to look at here. In their knife of the year videos, they've talked about blade stock and encouraged thinner blade stock. And I feel like that's misguided. Nick, this one, you know, I'm a little bit directing it at you. I know you like thin blade stocks because you work in an office. To me, an EDC knife is not a gentleman's carry. They're two different things. And an EDC knife has to be a jack of all trades and master of none. So yes, it needs to be able to cut things, but it also needs to be able to strip wires. It needs to be able to be effective outdoors. It needs to be a defensive option. It needs to be everything. That's what an EDC knife is to me. So an EDC knife like the TRM Atom, which made everyone's list this year, the blade stock is just too thin. It's too gentle. It's a gentleman's carry. It's not an EDC. And for that reason, I've got to complain just a little bit that everyone seems to be getting confused about what a knife needs to be, what an EDC knife needs to be. And to me, it's got to have some toughness. It's got to be something I can rely on if things go bad. And I know that rarely ever happens. I get it. But I have other options. If I'm totally in control of the situation, then I can go to the kitchen and get a paring knife. I don't need a folding paring knife in my pocket. I need a folding knife that can cut everything from cardboard, that can cut cardboard, that can break a car window, that can cut a seat belt, that can whittle wood, that can do all of the things that a cutting tool may need to do. And so my last gripe is the trend toward thinner blade stock. I don't appreciate that trend at all. I'm happy to have lightweight knives. I'm happy to have, you know, different locking mechanisms. I love cold steel, but it doesn't need to be the biggest, strongest, craziest knife all the time. But it does need to be durable enough to be flexed outside of, you know, cutting up an apple. All right, so there you go, guys. That is my favorite knives of the year, the knives that stood out to me the most. Just a quick rehash of that list. We had, of course, the 8010 and 8015. Which to me were the standout knives of the year by far. Okay, these two really were something special. We had some great stuff from Spyderco. We had the brinded Oh Evo Typhoon. We had the Benchmade Super Freak. I don't have a Super Freak, so we'll throw in a Benchmade Contigo. From We Knives, we had the Malice and the 037. We had the Steel Wheel Tasso, Civivi Elementum, and then I made mention of a couple of other great knives. So thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Use the discount code below over at White Mountain Knives. That does help the channel. Huge thank you to Justin for supplying so many of these knives and for making this channel possible. I think that's all I've got for this year, guys. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.